Hey, Jim, how was that Metallica concert last Friday? Jim, hey,
Hey, what?
how was the Metallica concert
What?
last Friday? The Metallica concert last Friday.
Oh, yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, you
really,
like it?
Really good show.
Okay.
Yeah, but you got to speak up a little more.
oh, really?
My ears are.
My name is Eric Lehnen. I'm a marketing consultant here at Redpath.
Hey, everyone. Jim Smale with Redpath, CEO and co-founder. Welcome.
So last week we talked with Jill St. Martin, a sales manager here at Redpath, to talk about how we align marketing and sales better and talk about best practices. So if you do want to see that last week's video, go ahead and click me here right now. So this week I brought Jim in to talk about driving your operations with data. So he's been behind a lot of the things that we've done here to operationalize everything in terms of all of our reports and dashboards, and he's kind of built the vision and actually designed everything, the architecture around it and all the best practices. And I think a lot of leaders would benefit from Jim's kind of journey through discovering all the process and the data of everything. So I brought him in to talk about what his vision and journey was in building that out. So the first thing I want to open up to is kind of what does it mean to you, Jim, to drive operations with data?
So one thing that we were really trying to accommodate here is to keep the focus on accountability and making sure that everybody really understood the area that they were accountable for, responsible for, and keep that front of mind for every specific individual within the organization. But so it was really designed as a tool for an individual, but then to bring it all together in a consolidated conversation when we're in leadership meetings and things like that.
Okay.
So
I know that another big benefit is also creating the visibility for it too. We have this tracking tool that analyzes all that data, makes it visible. So having that front of mind is also very helpful, because for me personally, if it's out of sight, it's out of mind.
Yeah.
And just always kind of driving meetings with that data and that visibility is very helpful.
Absolutely. And I mean, that was the thing that kind of drove me crazy in the beginning, was all the jumping around between sessions, was somebody's bringing a PowerPoint, somebody's talking off of a spreadsheet, and you really couldn't get the complete visual picture of what people were working on and how it related to our business objectives. So really kind of scrapped all of the individual documents and places that people were working off of, and really set a requirement that it had to be in Salesforce. So structuring our reports and dashboards around functions within the organization, goals that the organization had established, and then really expecting everybody to come to the table prepared to talk about how they're doing against those goals, issues that they're faced with, and what they're trying to do to move past and get back on track.
Sure.
So it's really helped, I think, for me personally, really helped kind of consolidate the conversation and keep things very focused in terms of what's important based on the time frame that we're in, but also relative to the overall organization goals and objectives.
Sure. So what was the journey that you took, and what kind of spearheaded all of this initiative?
So the journey that we've been on really kind of started out with initially going down the Salesforce path, specifically more for kind of our sales and getting our customer information into one place. And honestly, my initial reaction was, wow, this is expensive. Let's watch our cost on this particular platform. And quite honestly, we very quickly moved past the cost piece and really said, you know what, we've made this investment. We are going to really focus on leveraging as much of this platform as we can as an organization. So we made the conscious decision to commit to it, making commitments around, if it's not in Salesforce, it doesn't exist, and really requiring everybody to embrace it and use it. And it's moved now as an organization, it's moved now from how much does it cost to really what more can we do with it. So it's much more than a CRM to us. It's really become our core business platform. And now we're continuing to just take it to the next level. So it's been a great journey so far.
Cool. So what are some of the ways that you have operationalized some of the data or provided some of that visibility to the team?
Okay, so it's really, I think it's come down to more focusing on the business process around the platform. So we've tried many different things here, and some have worked well, some we've kind of scrapped and moved on by trial and error. But I think really fundamentally what it's come down to is implementing a series of, we want to minimize meetings as much as possible, and when we have a meeting we want to make sure it's meaningful and we're spending our time wisely. So it's come down to a couple of core things. We have short spot checks throughout the week. We call them scrum meetings. They are very targeted and focused either around sales, delivery, or marketing. And it's very action oriented. It's what is your priority this week? What issues are you faced with that the team can help you resolve and move forward? And what does next week look like? So it's very focused. Then we've got our weekly leadership meetings, which are more strategically focused around mainly the month's objectives. So kind of focused around the month and what we're doing and how we're doing against the month. And then we have another kind of layered approach where it's our quarterly review, and that's really more strategic in terms of, how did we perform in our prior quarter, and what are revisiting our quarter goals for the upcoming quarter, validating those quarterly goals, and talking about the specific tactics that each function within the organization is going to commit to. And then how are we going to measure it within Salesforce? So it's all sort of ties together into that sort of weekly, monthly, quarterly view. And then lastly, we'll use, in our business planning process, we'll use Salesforce to sort of revisit the last year, our progress against our goals, because they're all established there and we're managing it from there. And then talk about more strategically what are we going to focus on in the next year, and then ultimately how are we going to measure against it. So as you know, more and more of our conversations are, well, I'm doing this and I think I'm doing all right here. It's, well, okay, what's the goal that you've established? So it's great that we kind of think and feel these things, but what goal have you set for yourself to go against, to keep yourself focused and on target? And that's really the big driver that I think that we've seen great outcomes and results from, as far as focusing those goals and objectives within Salesforce. It makes it real, it makes it visual, and it's a easy talking point for all of us.
Absolutely. Yep. As long as you have kind of that vision of what you're going to be talking about on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly basis, you can draft those out and kind of, if you think about it, they're talking points.
Absolutely.
So you talked about kind of the time frame for different teams and the company. Well, what about on the individuals?
So individuals, it's pretty cool. So as I mentioned earlier, Salesforce has evolved in much more than just a CRM marketing tool, right? We now are incorporating all of what we call them KRAs, key results areas. This is the HR side of our house. So now we have, in the last year, we have moved forward with everybody has KRAs, or their objectives within Salesforce, and we're having weekly one-on-ones, our monthly reviews. So how are you doing? Check-in points, one-on-ones, and then we'll do a formal quarterly review. So our kind of annual employee review process is really, we've moved away from that effectively. It's now that we have it in Salesforce, we have our conversations tracked in Salesforce, we have our objectives tracked in Salesforce, and it's now become more of an ongoing conversation rather than one big end-of-year event, which is great. So that's what we intended it to be, and we're on the right track.
Cool. So Jim, what are some other examples that we could share with other business leaders of how, outside of our business and the different ways that we've used data to drive everything, what are some other examples that you could share with business leaders that could take that and use it for other areas? Okay.
Well, I think a couple of things come to mind. One, really kind of stepping back as a leader and stepping back and looking kind of at how things are going today in current state. what things are working well, what things aren't working very well, and really focusing on some of what information do you need that will help you make better decisions and understand sort of where you are in your business process or your business cycle, and determining what things that maybe you could redirect into more of a visual format that's more live, I should say, and real, to kind of get a better sense of the state of the organization. But to get there, what do you need to do? I mean, I would highly suggest that you work with your team, also get their input above and beyond your own input into what's working well, what's not working well, and sort of this idea of trying to bring things into one place to work from as a team. And with that said, if you're going to make a commitment like that, it's really about, as a team, committing to using the system commonly, consistently, and getting that commitment throughout the organization that says, we've noted these things, we're going to commit to this platform, commit to doing things this way, and really start down that path. And I think if you sort of take kind of a 3-step approach like that, and that commitment being very important from you yourself first, but then expecting it from your team, I think what you'll find is very quickly the conversations start becoming much more focused and targeted around your objectives, versus sort of trying to figure out where people are coming from, what information they're using to present to you, and that type of thing. So I think it's really kind of stepping back, analyzing what's working well, what's not working well, looking at how information is being presented and shared, and then breaking it down into what's working well for yourself and your team, and then that commitment piece. Sure. Committing to a new plan, a new way of doing things in a very shared fashion.
Yep.
And that would be my recommendation. I think you'll find that you'll learn a lot, and you're going to learn a lot more about yourself, your organization, as well as your other team members.
Sure.
But the conversation will completely change, I believe, and become much more targeted and focused, rather than sort of kind of all over the board, if that's something you're experiencing.
Yep. So one thing you're talking about earlier on was trying to get this buy-in from the rest of the team of,
Yep.
This is a strategy that you want to deploy, of trying to use data to make decisions on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So maybe it's important to talk about what are some ways to get that buy-in from your team, other than just trying to say, this is something I want, but what are some other ways that you can try and get their buy-in of this?
Sure. So I think one of the things, and it's a common question I'll ask, so in light of not having a measurement component in place in a conversation, typically I'll ask the question, so this all sounds really good, what you're telling me and what you're sharing with me, but sort of what does success look like to you? And how do you know if you do these things you're going to be successful? And granted, even if you state a goal and you state what success looks like, doesn't mean you're always going to hit it, but it's a target. And I think that's really what we're trying to get at, is helping the individual almost state what success looks like to them, rather than it being told to them. And once that's verbalized by them, it's kind of okay, commit. And it's a natural thing versus I need you to do this thing.
Got it. So what are some of the best practices that you could share that you've learned or developed on your own that you could share to help others?
So I think we kind of touched on a little bit of this throughout our conversation this morning, but kind of as I think about why have we been successful moving down this path? And I think, one, it has started with an approach, a collaborative approach of, as a core leadership group, sort of identifying the things that are important to us, but more importantly, identifying the things that are going to help us be successful both individually as well as an organization. So realizing and committing to those things together, I think has been helpful in the journey that we've been on so far. So best practices to me are really a collaborative approach to recognizing your areas where you need improvement and you have gaps, to identifying the things that you're going to implement in a single place to address the gaps that we've all identified as a team, and then ultimately, how do we measure ourselves and hold ourselves accountable? So I've got to show up and be prepared in every meeting that I'm part of, and I think the expectation is that anybody else should feel the same way. They come prepared, able to speak to their area of responsibility, and then be transparent. If you're stuck on something, you don't know something, put it out there.
Yep.
I mean, we're here to support each other and make each other successful. So I think that's kind of, if I kind of summed it up, it's collaboration, it's commitment, and the accountability, and then ultimately how do we measure ourselves and hold ourselves accountable to that commitment.
Yep, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So far so good. We've got a lot of areas to improve upon, but I think so far that seems to be working pretty well. And I over and over again, our collaborative culture here, and I know collaboration is used a lot in the industry, but it's pretty unique here, I think. And not only from a leadership standpoint, but how we support each other as a team, and through problem solving and decision making and that type of thing. So I think we're headed in the right path.
All right, well, that's a wrap for this week. My name is Eric. Thank you for watching this video.
And Eric, thanks for having me along here today. So thank you all for watching today, and I hope that you found this information useful. And thank you very much. Hope you tune in again.
So if you want to see some of these best practices that Jim was talking about with reports and dashboards, we actually have a really good video that talks about this in depth. One of our consultants put this together. So go ahead and click me right here to see that video, and it'll take you to some of the best practices for reports and dashboards on sales, marketing, and change management. Thanks.